Oh, well, so it is Sunday, September 3rd, and I'm here with my weekly wrap-up. And I was thinking, I was looking at this like, oh, like it was a terrible reading week. I didn't read hardly anything, but I did read 7 books. And only one of them was not from the book wall. It was a Kindle book, so it's not like a terrible average. It's generally somewhere between 7 and 10, so it's on the low end of average, but it's not terrible. So yeah, let's talk about what books I read. First up, I did finish up reading the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy, so that's great. I knocked off a series. I am terrible at starting a series and then just never finishing it. I will get the next book in the series in the book wall and I'll forget about it for 3 years and then I'll read it and I have no idea what's going on. But I did finish up Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Han. I haven't watched any of these movies yet. I do have Netflix though, so I probably will at some point. I know the first one's on my list. But the basic concept of this series is that there's this very shy high school girl named Lara Jean, and she, whenever she has a crush, to deal with that, she writes this intense love letter to this crush, and then she puts it in an envelope for some godforsaken reason, addresses it, and puts it in a hat box. And then one day her little sister's mad at her, and so she sends them all out, which is objectively hilarious. This is the 3rd book, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I really liked how the author made, because this one, obviously we've had our main couple together since book 1, and so we've got to have like all sorts of different like conflicts near, and I liked how the author made our male main character really vulnerable. Like he was really, like he had a lot of points where he didn't really know what he was doing and what was going on or where his relationship was going, and he was obviously hurt, and I liked that. I thought it was really well done. It's adorable. It's a good time. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not gonna lie. This is a really decent young adult contemporary series. There's a reason it got as popular as it did. So yeah. After that, I read Amina's Voice by Hana, which is about this young Muslim American girl who is in middle school. I believe she's starting 6th grade. And she's dealing with a couple different things. First off, her best friend is, I believe, Korean, and she is going to be changing her name to a more Americanized name, which our main character, Amina, is really not so sure about. Amina is also dealing with the fact that her father's very traditional, I want to say, either older brother or uncle is coming to America for a little bit, and she doesn't really know how that's going to change her life. And as well as that, there's a hate crime that happens. It's not super intense because this is a middle grade book, but a hate crime happens. And so they're dealing with a lot of that stuff. And I thought this was a very, very well done, very heartfelt middle grade book. I think that it's a good one. I think we've got a very solid main character. We got a very solid plot. We've got very solid writing. I think it was a good time. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's definitely, I think, something that I am going to be putting in my 5th grade classroom. It is on the back here. It says ages 8 to 10, and I would agree. I think that really fits. It's a good time. Then I read probably my most disappointing book of the week, which I'm really sad about. And that's The Woods Are Dark by Richard Laymon. Now, I've read a lot of Richard Laymon recently, in the past couple years, and this is one, whenever you're talking about Richard Laymon, that people talk about. Like, this is one that gets talked up a lot. And this is the restored and uncut version, because apparently when it was first published, a lot of stuff got cut out, and that made it really like kind of hard to deal with. But the thing is, Laymon has done it so much better than this. Like, when it comes to cannibalism, he's got better cannibalism books. He's got better creepy things, sexually assaulting women books. Beast House, I'm Looking at You. He's got better All the Horrors Happen in One Night books. And this one is so short, and I think that's where it's really detrimental. Is because it is so short. The other books by him that I've read that I compared to in my heart are all much longer. And I think that this one it's okay. Like, it's very definitively Laymon. It's got a lot of his stuff in it that you can tell, like, oh yeah, that's Laymon. But he's done it better. He's done it better. I really didn't care for this one very much. It wasn't even really all that fun. It was like, yeah, well, okay. It had its moments, but I feel like it should have been longer. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It was very disappointing. Also, on the disappointing train, this one was kind of my fault because in my heart, I kept comparing it to Exquisite Corpse because it's a gorgeously written cannibalism book that's objectively mildly horrifying, but like has some really like literary elements to it. And it was not near as good as Exquisite Corpse because not much is as good as Exquisite Corpse. And that is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, which is about this food critic that starts killing and eating men. Gorgeously written. I loved the writing style. I loved the kind of hopping around in time we did. But as I was reading it, I really mostly just wanted to be rereading Exquisite Corpse because it wasn't, I think, horrifying enough for me. I don't know. It just wasn't quite what I wanted. It wasn't quite there. It's definitely, I think, worth a read if you're into the cannibalism stuff. Definitely, I would say a good cannibalism book, but it's just not the best of the best. I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Objectively speaking, great, but just I compared it too much. Then I reread the second Harry Potter book in the beautiful Slytherin edition. I do buy these secondhand. Actually, I'm finished now. I got all of them. And I know that there's a lot going on with this series, with this author, with people denouncing stuff like that. And especially people my age who did grow up with the books. I'm kind of on the younger end of that. I was like barely born when the first book came out, but I do remember in 2007, you know, sitting waiting for my little sister to be born and like reading the very last Harry Potter book. You know, like it was a very huge part of my childhood, like it was a lot of people who are my age and like a little bit older. And it is really hard, you know, to distance yourself from something that is in your childhood like that. And I am not really willing to completely denounce everything. I'm glad that I'm not one of those people that got a Harry Potter tattoo. But you know how it is. And I do think that it's a very charming middle grade series, and I don't know how much of it is my nostalgia talking when I'm rereading this. But it's definitely, I mean, like, it's fun. There's a lot of stuff in here that's really, really fun, and I don't think we can completely discount that because it is a very engaging middle grade series, and it would not have gotten so popular if it was not very engaging and fun and good. I give it 5 out of 5 stars on my reread. Next up, I read this one, actually pleasantly surprised me because I read the first book in the series, I think earlier this year or last year, and it was very meh for me. It was like maybe when I was 10 I would have really loved this, and then I read this one and it was, I'm gonna say, half decent. That is The Vampire's Assistant by Darren Shan. This is the second book in the Cirque du Freak series. What's the first book called? The first book is called Cirque du Freak. Okay. And this one, our main character is a vampire or half vampire, and he is, you know, they end up going back to the Cirque du Freak, and we meet some more characters. We get to know the characters in the circus a little bit more. It is amazingly horrifying at points. Like it gets real gory sometimes. I think the childishness that was the juvenile nature of the first book that made me really be like, I should have read this, you know, 10 years ago. 15 years ago. I think that was in a lot of ways really kind of dealt with in a way that made this still, I mean, it's still a young adult book, but it felt more young adult than middle grade now this time around, and I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. Very much pleasantly surprised me. And the last book I read this past week was a Kindle book, and it's called Smarter Together by Rob Bershteyn. I'll put up a picture of the cover. Look, man, I was a humanities major and I just hate business people. I give it 1 out of 5 stars. This is my fault. I just hate that. Currently, I am reading My Beautiful Arc of the Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I'm like 400 pages in. It is, I'm not actually sure how I feel about it. I don't know how, if this is being marketed as like, if this is being marketed as a direct sequel to A Darker Shade of Magic, or The Shades of Magic, or whatever series that series is called, or like a 4th book to that series, I will be like, all right. But if it's not, there is no way that you could read this without reading the other series. There's absolutely no way. It is so concerned with that other series. And don't get me wrong, I love Alucard. I love how we are getting more of his like childhood trauma in this one, of his complete psychopath of an older brother. But like, this is so deeply deeply entrenched in the first series. But that's what I'm currently reading. I hope to finish it very, very soon, because I've been reading it since, oh man, I've been reading it for like 4 days, which doesn't sound like less than a 600-page book, but for me that is a lot. I read 10 books a week. But these are the books I read this past week. That is all for today. I'll talk to you later, and goodbye.